Australian cyber technology will be used to power Ukraine's newest line of defence against Russian hackers. Cybersecurity firm Internet 2.0, based in Canberra, will establish an office in Ukraine where it will train Ukrainian military veterans to ward off attacks. The partnership is the latest example of private industry, Australian industry, supporting Ukraine. Robert Potter is the co-chief executive of Internet 2.0. He's just returned from Ukraine in the last few hours, where he put pen to paper on this deal. Let's bring in Robert now live from Sydney. So this memorandum of understanding with the Minister for Digital Transformation in Ukraine, give our viewers a sense, Robert, of what it's all about and what you're hoping to achieve there.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me, Kieran. It's been a really interesting last few weeks as we've worked with the Ukrainian government. Since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February of this year, Internet 2.0 has been working with the Ukrainian government to provide cybersecurity intelligence, cyber technologies and training to give them every help that we can during their fight against Russia. Over the past few weeks, we formalised that, now that it was an opportunity for me to go into Kyiv and formally sign an MOU to take the relationship into the next stage of development, with us opening an office there and going through the process of training a significant number of veterans who are no longer able to serve on the front line in the conflict in cybersecurity, so they can continue to contribute to their country's national defence.
And when we talk about this as the country's defence, how serious are the incursions from the Russians when we're talking about cyberspace? So
we've seen over the past few weeks, we've learned a lot about how Ukraine has been kind of leading the charge, and so this is a two-way set of learning opportunity for us to learn from them as much as it is them from us, because they're the first country to go through a real full-scale cyber war. Now, there's been a lot of commentary about the level of success of Russia's capability. They certainly, cyber is at its most decisive in wartime at the beginning and the preparation, much like an air force is. However, over the last few weeks, we've seen that the Russians have now moved into a new phase of cyber operations in Ukraine, where they're trying to pair cyber with missile strikes on the critical infrastructure of Ukraine to leave its civilian population cold and without electricity during the peak of winter. So we've seen that very much their cyber capability has become an enabler for their conventional missile capability. And so far, Ukraine has been as successful in defending because they've got so many they've got an indigenous capability along with significant partnerships with companies like ours, like Amazon and other large technology giants that have been supporting them to make sure that they have everything that they need to defend themselves against Russia.
And how do the veterans themselves bring some assets to the job as well, obviously, from the battlefield?
So because Ukraine is a volunteer military, they have soldiers from a whole range of backgrounds, some of which are incredibly useful in cross-training into cybersecurity. So there's software developers who are fighting as frontline riflemen. And because the conflict has been going for 6 months, there's a number of them who've been wounded or are no longer able to serve on the front lines. We're going through the process of training them in advanced cyber capabilities so they can continue to contribute, because just because they can't serve in a riflery unit anymore, it doesn't mean they're not really smart, they haven't learned amazing things about being mission-oriented, that they don't still have that will to win that we've seen them take to the battlefield. And so by cross-training them into cybersecurity, we want to be able to introduce a pilot program for Ukraine that'll train about 3,500 veterans for defensive cybersecurity operations, which we can then eventually use as a program to help transition what will eventually be one of the largest post-warfare transitions of veterans back into the private sector. So we want to set up programs like this that have an immediate impact on being able to help them on the battlefield, but then also flow through into the post-war environment where we're leveraging what will be one of the largest demobilizations after the war since World War II.
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because President Zelensky spoke about the reconstruction. Already the conflict continues, and albeit in the midst of a bitter winter in Ukraine right now, but his focus is about the reconstruction effort mobilising countries around the world. His focus today was on New Zealand, but one would imagine that you're building that cyber capacity will enable them to shore up their systems over the medium to longer term, which will be pivotal in the face of trying to rebuild.
Absolutely right, and because we see ourselves as a long-term partner to the Ukrainian government, just as we are to the Australian government. This is our first time really working outside of the Five Eyes community to provide this sort of capability. As a team, we've already trained in partnership with our other partners in this particular engagement, which is everything from the largest telecommunications company in Ukraine through to outsourced software developers in Ukraine through to veteran training companies in Australia. We've trained some 30,000 veterans across the Five Eyes through similar programs already. So this is a program that will work for Ukraine, but it's also a program that we hope will have an economic contribution, because those veterans that we're training who don't go onto the front lines can go into private sector just as easily. And so much of Ukraine's outsourced software capability, its huge development skill set, has been hugely important in Ukraine taking the cyber fight to Russia and winning it.
Rob Potter, Chief Executive of Internet 2.0, thanks for your time, appreciate it, and congratulations on your efforts there in Ukraine.